Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube and you see a link, you can actually click on it and you'll end up in Zoom. if you click on that, you'll end up in Mukana, and there you become a producer. You actually run the show. We don't actually have a plan. We have a little bit of a plan for the second hours, but otherwise the big plan is to answer your questions about media and virtual production. Now, if you think you can answer those questions, then what you want to do is come in at 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. You got to be here by then to do the mic checks. If you're not sure if you're ready for the mic checks, if you want to do a little extra checking or you want to check your kit, you can come in at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we talk about all kinds of stuff. We're just meandering conversation. Don't be pushed aside. Jump in and say, "Hey, I need to check something out," and you can do that at between 6 and 6:40. Then we'll do the mic checks, and then at 7 o'clock we start general discussion. Any question that you have around virtual or media production. Second hour is usually something a little bit more focused. Today we've talking about this for a while, and we're going to go ahead and do it. We're going to talk about horror stories. What went wrong in your live event? So no brands or clients we mentioned. It's just what happened, and what you did, or whether it came out the other end. But the events that will not be named, we'll talk about that a little bit. Tomorrow we're going to talk about exploring just tuning versus well-tempered scale. Yeah, if you don't know what it is, then you should come on Tuesday. And so we'll talk about that there. Fly kits are on Wednesday. What do we put in our fly kits? We started talking about this over the weekend and thought it'd be good for us to actually dig into it. We're doing ruthless reviews on Thursday. So this will be audio and video. We're getting ready to kind of start expanding some of what we're doing. And we're going to kind of dig into that. I was going to do it next week, but our next week is actually so busy that I can't put it in. So we'll have that for the following week. And then we're going to do a general Q&A. We did a lot of AWS, and we're going to do a general Q&A on AWS on Friday because it's just to kind of see where people are at and have a general discussion. Nothing major that's structured, but we found that there were so many questions with AWS that it's just worth having just a whole hour just dedicated to that. So we'll be doing that on Friday. Saturday, Education Roundtable in the morning. One note is the Education Roundtable is getting pretty nuts and bolts, and so we will not be putting that on YouTube. So the Education Roundtable, starting for a little while, will be only on Zoom. For the discussion because of the nature of what we're talking about. So we're kind of getting into a real nuts and bolts of building a program. So anyway, it will be, you can still join us on Zoom. It just won't be on YouTube. And then at 3 o'clock, we'll start Mad in the Kitchen. You can listen to Nate and the crew putting together the show, getting ready to go. We've got a lot of people here on the panel working on it. And so you can listen to the behind the scenes, listen to the show, and then talk about it afterwards, ask questions. It's an incredible way to learn how a live event runs by a lot of great people that are putting it together. And so I think it's kind of a unique view. I haven't seen it before. People are able to see as much as we're showing. So anyways, it's a great opportunity. All right, let's jump into the questions. Guy, what do we got?
First one's coming in from Christian Olivier in Helsinki. Zoom has a call to speaker for Zoomtopia. Will a representative from Office Hours apply to showcase what you are doing?
I think I should probably apply for that. So I'm glad you posted it there. I'll if you guys think we should talk about it a little bit. I'll apply. So yes, the answer is yes. We'll do that. All right. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Rupert McRae. It is estimated that the Zoom platform helped reduce CO2 emissions by more than 55 million tons in 2020, equal to taking 11 million cars off the road. How do we now justify the environmental cost of in-person events and productions? And he's got a note with the link.
Well, I mean, there's already, we've been talking about, all through last year, we did some work with environmental groups they're definitely planning as conventions start. They're going to start asking large conventions to publish their carbon footprint, like what of all the people coming in and everything else that's there. We're probably never going back to the size of events that we had. We may have a year or two of that, but they're probably over. It doesn't mean there won't be any gatherings. There won't be any conferences. It's just that the ones of large scale are probably going to fade in the next 5 years because of the people are going to pressure them a lot to stop. Because it stopped for a while, and we don't even know what's going to happen this fall. Go ahead, Stuart.
As somebody who owns an older car, 2020 and COVID was great, and using Zoom instead was absolutely fabulous for saving money instead of pouring it into a fuel tank.
Yeah.
People have got to look at that as well. I mean, I saved enough money from stopping driving a Valiant with a slant six and a 4-barrel to be able to afford a Voyager to carry my gear around. I mean, it's not spending the money and the fuel is a good thing for everybody.
I just don't like to waste the time. You know, to me, monotasking on a car is just a waste of time. You know, so that's my big thing is. But for me, all my life, it's always been the value. I've said it before. My wife can tell you where the cheapest gas is in any given town, and I can tell you every gas station with the right turn in and the right turn out. You know, so I like everything to me is time. So I don't have any idea. She's like, "How much did that gas cost?" I was like, "I don't know. It's right turn in, right turn out." So next question.
Next one's coming in from Matt Cool in Montreal, Quebec. Had a recent power failure in our office, and it almost affected an online production as the UPS came close to running out of power. Does anyone have any advice for purchasing a generator for under $1,000?
Go ahead, Stuart.
It doesn't matter whether it's 1,000 Australian or 1,000 US. You won't get a decent inverter on a generator for that sort of price. Try to save a little bit more, spend a little bit more. Honda make a really good range of silenced generators that you won't hear regardless of where you're using them. Yeah,
the one we've used in the past is the Honda Generator 2200i. It's a 1099, and it won't produce enough to run a big rig, but it will definitely produce enough to run a basic virtual event. And they don't make much noise, as Stuart outlined. Once you start getting into the 3,000 to 5,000, we start thinking about Generacs at that point, and those are $3,000 to $6,000. You can get a Generac that will run a pretty big rig. So the big thing is you have to also think about your entire pipeline. You want UPSs that are going to be there, and they provide we did a bunch of events last year that every time we did the event, we turned 2 generators on or actually fired them up, and then everything's ready, and we knew which plugs. You want to practice it, which plugs are going to go to the generator, how you're going to switch over if you need it, and if you have enough UPS, you'll be able to have plenty of time to do it. It won't matter. Everything's just beeping. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, some systems we do UPSs for, and we do exactly that and put a generator, UPS, that sort of thing. Some we do DC for everything, and it's more of a telecom model where you wind up running a battery bank that's on a charger, and then you have multiple methods of charging those batteries, but right. Everything, even the computers, are all running on DC. So that's the most effective. I mean, that's the larger scale version of that. That you absolutely is the best way to go. It just takes a lot more infrastructure and time and management to get it off the ground. Absolutely. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Samuel Nordvik in Norway. What could you recommend for an affordable gray/white backdrop? Does anyone have experience using gray roller blinds?
I think it would depend on what's affordable. The easiest one to just put up and to move around in my opinion, is the Lazulite, gray/black or gray/white. It's $150 some. So I don't know if that's affordable or not. That's what's behind me right now. And it's just easy to pop up, and it's behind Nigel, and it's easy to pop up. The nice thing about it is there's not a lot of wrinkling. You can pack it and move it somewhere. You can do a lot of those things as well. Go ahead, Tucker. What are you showing there?
It's the Fovitec, same sort of thing. Pops out, super easy. That's what this is.
And does it have is there a gray version of that, or is it just blue?
I'll have to check. I would imagine so, but
the hardest part we've had is finding gray ones. It just seems like there's blue and there's green, and people want to do blue screen or green screen, and then we don't see a lot of just neutral color, which I think works pretty well. Next question.
Next one's coming in from John Pewitt in Huntersville, North Carolina. I heard drop versus non-drop in regards to Jason sync issues. What is drop versus non-drop time code?
Just waiting for someone else to answer, but yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
So the important thing to remember is that time code is labeling frames. So each video frame gets a number on it. So you never have any change to the actual video. It's just the numbering system. Non-drop is consecutive numbers that counts up from 0 to 29 frames in a second if there are 30 frames in a second. And drop frame skips some of those to catch up with the clock on the wall. Because 2997 video runs slower than an integer frame rate, it will fall behind normal time. So what I call clock on the wall or real time of day. And so we need to skip numbers to catch up. So if you think about your street and you have 7 houses down your street, they all get their own address. If they are numbered consecutively, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's non-drop. If they skip some, 1, 2, 3, 5, that's drop frame.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, everything Jeff said was very accurate. And I just wanted to say that in mentioning drop frame versus non-drop frame as a problem here for delay or for sync issues, it's not necessarily the SMPTE time code that anything is using. It's the time base, and it's the integer versus non-integer, and 2997 versus 30. And it's the sample rate differences that can cause the problem, whether you're counting frames or not. And so a difference in sample rates between your video and your audio can cause one or the other to drift, so that even if it's not doing drop frame won't change the sample rate of the video. It just will change the accounting if you're looking at the numbers. And most things don't usually look at the numbers to stay in sync.
We have had issues where sync drops out if we have drop frame versus non-drop. It's a really well-known thing, and not 30 versus 2997, but 2997 versus drop versus non-drop. It depends on what's playing it back and what the different hardware. But sometimes they'll correct the audio for that, and so we'll take it into like Wave Agent and fix it. Just tell it, renumber it, and then the audio lines back up again. And so the that has been an issue in the past for us. But generally, if you're in a broadcast truck, you'll be all in drop frame because they want to keep the truck time to the real time. But if you're in post-production environment, a lot of times we drop, we go back to non-drop frame because we don't care. So that it just depends on, and those interactions are interesting when you mix the two crews together, because that one crew wants one thing and the other crew wants the other. Go ahead, Chris, and then Jeff.
When you start talking about frame rates and time code.
Oh, you're falling apart, Chris.
Goodbye.
Okay, sorry. Who was next? Okay, good. Jeff.
So the difference between 2997 and 30 is 0.1% or 1 part in 1,000. That is 108 frames an hour, so about 3.5 seconds an hour of drift if you have a 30 running against a 2997. 48 kilohertz to 44.1 kilohertz is like closer to 10%, so that's a very perceivable speed and pitch change, whereas 29 to 30 is not perceivable, but it will drift over time if those two are running against each other.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Matt Wood in Newcastle upon Tyne. I've noticed a number of high-profile live stream fails lately, perhaps most notably Glastonbury. What is going on? What is going wrong when hosting these high-profile / high-capacity events? And do these run a risk of people dismissing live stream events as just being riddled with tech issues?
My experience is the primary reason that live streams fail is either people are inexperienced, they just haven't done a live stream before, or they're event companies trying to do live streams. So right now we end up with a lot of event companies that have been doing physical events and they're very good at them, but they don't understand the vagaries of a live stream, and so they have this idea of, well, we know how to run, I can run a whole concert and I understand all the in and outs, but a live stream is a different beast, and it's a very unforgiving one. And so, the cadence and the process and the fact that it just has to start when it has to start, and, they get caught up in it. And so we've seen that over and over and over again. Very, very talented and experienced crews, basically running into the water because they just don't they don't bring someone in that's done a bunch of them. And a lot of times that's what that's what I do is I come in and I integrate with that crew and I figure out what they're doing. And then I figure out, we figure out what they, how to get that done. And we work with them logistically to make sure that there's a primary and a backup to that and a backup to that. And how are we going to handle this? And what are we going to do here? And it's how are you going to handle? And a lot of times we're going to talk about this in the second hour. It comes down to cascading effects. You have to build firewalls. Like, how am I going to get out of something if this happens? How am I going to get out of this if this happens? And you're building a series of firewalls so many things can go wrong before it affects something that the viewer sees. And that's what most event companies don't understand. And so you end up, and because they already have a great relationship with and trust with the client will say, okay, let's do a big event with them. And they say, oh yeah, we can do this. We got this all figured out. And they don't have it all figured out. Or they, and the problem is you get into a serious case of you don't know what you don't know, and that's until you've done a couple hundred events. Like, I had all kinds of problems in the first couple hundred, so that's and so when you're doing, this is your 8th event or 10th event, you think that it's like when you start to learn to fly, they say at about 500 hours is when most people kill themselves. Like, like if they're going to die flying, it's going to be at 500 hours because they think that they know what they're doing, but they don't yet, and so that gets into it. You do a couple of live events and you think that you got it figured out, and then all the other stuff happens. And that's what we're going to talk about in the second hour. Go ahead, Charles, and then Stuart.
Yeah, I'll have to say it's a very different beast, and people need to know what they're getting themselves right into. I just watched a network get somebody to do a live feed, and it was because of some relations that they had, but the person didn't have any experience live streaming events. They had a lot of experience in person, but they had their relationship and it went horribly wrong.
Yeah.
It failed. It's a different beast. And I know there's a lot of people that have been taking advantage of getting experience by watching videos on YouTube and all that stuff, but it's a very different beast. And I would just go by what Alex is saying. It takes time.
The way that we do it, a lot of times when a client says, okay, we're going to want to do this on our own over time, we usually say, well, let us do about 10 events with you, and basically we do the first 3, then we start integrating your crew in. We just start pulling one person out of our crew at a time for the next 4. And then the last 3, we're just on call, and so the idea is that we can just hand that process off to them, but they do it slowly so that we succeed and they see it first, then they slowly start adding it, but it's not all new people. You slowly integrate that, and then you hand it off to them, and you just sit there and you answer questions and maybe even have somebody on site, kind of plugging gaps. But the goal, and then by then we found that to be almost 100% successful. The ones that got in trouble was we'd come in and do an event for a client, and then they'd want to do the next one, because then they were so excited about what happened the first one, they were like, let's do it big, but we'll do it ourselves. And then they, found that was a real rough. No, Stuart?
Yeah, just for anyone either watching this now or watching this later, if you look at the bottom left corner of the screen, you'll see people's names and their location. So if you're looking for somebody to do a live stream and would like to access the panel's knowledge, you can follow those links and the one to Discord and contact people and hire them in your area.
That's fine. All right. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Marty Atius in Silver Spring, Maryland. Zoom's new recording started/stopped announcement is causing lots of consternation. What can be done about it?
I think nothing can be done about it. Go ahead, Jonas.
If you have an account with 100 API users, normal users, or enterprise users, you can disable it for internal, but it is something that is just legally required to be played. And we all will be happy in a few weeks or months when a new feature drops that they remodel the consent flow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite sure. I mean, it did say it was recording before. I think this is probably for those that may have vision issues that can't see it saying record. I think that's my guess, is that the auditory was to make sure that they were covered as well. Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
And before you could turn off the notice, now you can't. Not even the administrator. Nobody can turn it off for external users.
And it is legally required if you're recording that the part in the United States, most states require both parties to understand audio recording. Video is usually not something that's covered, but if you're recording, the other side has to will usually consent or at least know that they're being recorded. Next question.
Chris Taylor in Winter Park, Florida. Are there any reasonable solutions for converting a USB 4K webcam, a Brio, to an HDMI output for use in an ATEM Mini?
No. No, don't do it. Just don't. You can go through a Raspberry Pi and do it. It's just funky. No. Next question.
Next one's from Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia. Any simple suggestions to bring one remote guest into a conversation with low enough latency video and audio so you can use with SuperSource? I have a Mac Mini or Raspberry Pi available. Question inspired by Aaron Parecki's live session on Mix Effect. Did this with OBS.Ninja.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Yeah, you can definitely do that. So, I mean, that's what we do all the time. So I'm sorry if I'm confused. So you just got to build a mix minus, you're bringing a person in. I would use a Mac Mini, not a Raspberry Pi. You're going to take the video out, the basically HDMI out of the Mac Mini into your switcher, convert it however you're going to get it into the switcher. Then you're going to take the output, and you can either send them back a custom output through an aux, or you can send them the program back, and then you just need something to digitize it to go back into that computer. So that would be, whatever, and you can try to do it. I think some of us will do it with NDI and try to do it inside of Zoom. I prefer not to do that. I prefer to do it, into a physical switcher. But then you're going to send that back out to them, and you'll use a mini recorder or something else to get it back in as a return feedback to them. And then that latency will be very low. It will maybe not be as low as OBS Ninja, but the video quality will be higher, and it will get through more complex events, more complex stuff with it. I have been using, OBS Ninja is actually, we use it for teleprompting. We started using it last week for teleprompting because Zoom has a funny thing with text that it will, when you do the screen share with text, it can freeze, which turns out for what we're doing is pretty painful. And so Zoom doesn't handle moving text, stopping and starting very well. And so what we found was that by having our teleprompt operator move to OBS Ninja, it worked much better. It doesn't look as nice, but it works better than Zoom. So it's not that we don't use OBS Ninja, but Zoom, from a pure video quality of bringing someone in, I would rather use Zoom than OBS Ninja. Since no one else is raising their hand, I'm just going to go to the next question. Oh, go ahead, Guy.
One more to add to that. There's another new contender in this realm called Stream Voodoo, and you crank up their bitrate to, I believe it was 20. You switch it to VP9 codec, and then you crank it up as high as it'll go. And man, the quality at 4K, it just blows anything else away that I've seen so far. So if you're on that path right now, I was trying this with OBS Ninja as well. Try Stream Voodoo and see what you think of those. It does get pricey once you start to add people into it. So you can actually have rooms and ISO people. So, and it's got a green room as well.
Is it pretty stable?
So far from what I've tried, yeah, because it was developed for gamers. In fact, that guy Deadmau5 is bankrolling it, so he's funding it. So they've done some 4K games, esport tournaments with it, and that's how it was inspired, was because they needed that large resolution with high data rate, because the games, some of these explosions and whatnot have, just a lot of moving pixels, and it doesn't break apart. If you watch some of the demos, it's super impressive. So. It looks like Jonas has something to say about it.
Yeah, go ahead, Jonas.
And the big difference between OBS Ninja and Stream Voodoo is OBS Ninja is purely peer-to-peer based, and Stream Voodoo has a server in between. So that's why it works more reliably, because in theory, you can send 4K 20 Mbits per second over OBS Ninja. You just have to tweak it.
I'm going to test that this week. Good. That was a good one. All right, next question.
Next one's coming in from Johnny Estias in Manila. The Mix Effect app by Adam Toe now has a line to grid feature for SuperSource boxes and OSC interface, so it can be controlled from OSC clients. And soon on 1.0.4, a video follows audio feature that auto transitions based on input audio levels. What other features would you all like to see?
I don't know. I literally, because of that app, I'm pulling one of my monitors off my stand and putting my older iPad. Now I have a new iPad, so I'm going to put my older iPad in, and that's all it's going to do. So I'll be testing a lot more this week as we get ready for stuff. But we think that we're going to do a lot more. So I'll probably have, if you ask that question in a week, I'll probably have a whole bunch of suggestions. I don't know if anybody else has. It's really, I'm pretty excited about it because of just the ability to have something that looks like it's just real time, lets us just kind of jump from one. It's been the biggest pain point for ATEMs, in my opinion, is dealing with the super sources. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, he released a video last night, and it shows the new features of 1.0.3. And one of them that he mentions, he held up a 8K constellation and some of the higher end pieces that Blackmagic loaned him for testing. So he is stabilizing the thing. And then Jonas said something to me which kind of shocked me, which was he wouldn't use it in a production. And now I'm curious as to why it's not in the SDK directly, or what was it, the API or something?
Since it doesn't use the native SDK, it uses a reverse internet network protocol. The SDK is stable for each ATEM. With the network protocol, you don't know 100% what they do. So this is something to consider. If it works at one version and you upgrade, it couldn't suddenly crash your ATEM in worst case.
Yeah, so that means I think that would be we would test it on one and then not up. And we're known for keeping our updates being way behind Blackmagic. We've learned to let Blackmagic updates last 2 or 3 months before we jump on them. Go ahead, Guy.
And then somebody else had mentioned in the Discord that they're having issues with it disconnecting, and I would advise to use it with a Ethernet adapter, and it's totally rock solid stable. That's why I've hooked up right now, and I haven't experienced any drop connection. So wireless for testing, but production, wire it up with an Ethernet adapter.
I would never do it with wireless. One thing that we're interested in is doing it over VPN. So that's something that we may try to experiment with, is being able to have somebody anywhere in the world being able to do the super sources. The other thing that we'll be interested in is being able to integrate Mukana through Mix Effects. So there's a bunch of things we're building on the back end that we want to be able to like pop up, the 3 people that are answering or whatever very quickly. And so that, along with Zoom ISO, are things that we're because we're getting ready, over the next couple of weeks over the summer to basically scrape everybody out of the panel so that we have random access to them inside the switcher. And so that in my mind, Mix Effects with Zoom ISO with a whole bunch of other things give us a very, very complex show, probably more complex than almost any broadcast show. It won't look like something crazy. It's not like there's tons of graphics, but anybody doing broadcast, watching what we're doing by the end of the summer, if we're successful, will be like, how are they doing that? And so it's going to be integrating all these different pieces together. Next question.
Next one's coming in from John Foltz in Sellens Grove, Pennsylvania. There's a lot of talk about SMPTE 2110. Does anyone have experience with it? And will it become an NDI replacement?
I mean, it's already in large installations. 2110 is the future. I mean, NDI will continue to be something that is a little more scrappy. As far as a solution, it won't be as hard to put together, but all the big installations and trucks, anything built now is being built with 2110 at scale. Go ahead, John.
So Fenwick, Doug, and I got a tour of this truck. They did their first show a couple weeks back. And after I saw this truck, I wanted to curl up in the corner with my fruit box, with my fruit roll up and my juice box. It's incredible. Yeah. The network infrastructure is amazing.
Yeah. And it's going to take a lot of network infrastructure. I mean, it really is. That's why we're going to keep on coming back to IT, Q&A and everything else so that we really understand it. But over the next, it's not going to happen immediately, but over the next 3 to 5 years, 21110 will take over most large productions. We're kind of at that point. Where we saw back, in the day, there was a change from analog to SDI, and those kinds of things happen, and so we're about to see that evolution as we move forward. So it's gonna be interesting. But we'll see if we can bring somebody from SMPTE in actually to talk about 2110. Someone should put that in the second hour, so I remember. All right, next question.
Next one's coming in from Tlaloc Miguel Lopez Waterman in New York, and I think he's actually in Ohio, not New York today, right, Tlaloc? I have to say the panel is sounding really good these days. People are leveling up. How many are using Zoom for noise suppression, and how many are using noise assist? Noise assist.
Okay, so all hands for noise assist, and then hands for Zoom. And some people are just living large. So there you go. It's a mix, but both of them work pretty well. I mean, I think that the Zooms has gotten pretty good as well as far as being able to remove a lot of the fan noise. Jeffrey?
Yeah, anybody using software switching like Wirecast or vMix has the ability to do some sort of noise suppression inside there as well.
Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
I just got rid of some stuff in the room that was making noise. I arrayed and cleaned it up.
That's noise logistics. It's not noise assist. It's noise logistics. Like, yeah, that is the best way to handle your noise is to move things out of the room or put them in boxes.
It's now in the laundry room, and who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Laundry room, now known as the server room. Next question.
Yeah, sorry if you hear my kids watching YouTube, they're stirring about. So speaking of noise, I can't put them in a box or whatever that other suggestion was.
Okay, very good.
All right, next one's coming in from Tommy Tachance from St. Paul, Minnesota. What does the person that cuts the show actually do?
Stuart?
Mostly panic. But in the case of this, I'm only switching between gallery view and speaker view, and I'm looking for shares coming from things like I just missed one from Jeffrey Powers about one of the previous questions, because cookies. In the case of live shows where you're dealing with incoming cameras, you listen to a director and you're basically pulling up the sources that the director wants, unless it's a director who switches themselves, in which case you might have somebody there who's called the vision switcher and they're queuing up cameras and getting them ready for what they're expecting the director wants. If it's any sort of post-production, you hand over to someone like, if I can go gallery view and see if Chris is still here. So there's what I've been doing. You hand over to somebody who's a talented editor and you let them cut it.
Yeah, and you're going to see kind of things evolving inside of what we're doing pretty soon. So the first hour will stay the way it is, but the second hour we're going to start. It'll be a little different where the host, the people that we're interviewing will have kind of a 1-up or 2-up, or, and we'll probably at times invite certain people that make the most sense for that conversation to be, in that conversation, but it'll be a little different as we start to go. And that's going to be a hybrid where the first hour is being done in Zoom and the second hour is being done in an ATEM, so that'll be something. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I have a question since I've never done it. I'm a newbie here there too. If you're switching the show via Zoom, do you have to have two screens to do that? One with the gallery and one with the speaker views, or the one that is whose view is being used as the host going out? One with the gallery view so you can select somebody to pin them?
Just lost Stuart. Oh, there's the screens. There's Stuart's screens. Yeah. Yeah, so he's got a couple screens. But the big thing that for most people who have been switching,
yes, but he wasn't switching. He went to his view.
What you need to switch is really to make sure that you can see the participant view, so that you know for sure what people are seeing. So that's usually the thing that's the most important. So, and I think that's what you're seeing with down below there. But you have to be able to see the participant view, because otherwise you can get yourself kind of turned around. Go ahead, Beju.
Yeah, something I learned from Mickey when I did it in the past was it actually helps to have a second account sitting on the panel, which you keep locked on gallery view. So you can even because as the host, you're switching between speaker view and gallery view as you're showing, because the attendees are seeing what you are seeing. Having a second account in the panel, being able to see the shares makes it easier for you to select if you need to pin some spotlight somebody else to show a share or something. It helps a lot there as well. And sometimes it helps to have a third, either Zoom instance in attendee or just watching the YouTube to see how it's going overall.
Go ahead, Craig.
That has to be done by host, or can it be done by a co-host? Is it only the host view that works?
It's only the host view that works. And really what Zoom needs is and maybe we'll see this with the webinar, thing that, but one of the things that Zoom needs is another class of user called editor, or something like that is just there to do that thing. That doesn't have to be host. It's kind of absurd that only a host can make those changes. So hopefully they'll move that direction. To us, it won't matter much longer. Like next couple months, after by August we won't care. Like from our perspective, we won't. By the end of the year, we won't even know how that works anymore. I think that we're kind of moving past that. We're still using the Zoom back end, but we're not. But we won't be really interacting with the tools anymore. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Charles Klein in New York City, proud owner of the new iPad that not all of us have. So he's asking this question to all the iPad users: what are your must-have apps for work and for play?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
I use Procreate, which is the drawing app with the pencil. It's fantastic. It forces you, coming using Photoshop and Illustrator for a million years. It forces you down a path to learn, but once you get the hang of it, it's a fantastic app.
Yeah, go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, a bit boring, but Microsoft Office, and I would encourage you, if you've not worked out how to get dual screen working yet and get two different things up at the same time, that is the most effective tool I use when I'm working is, my mail up and a document or a PowerPoint or something.
Anyone else? Yeah, go ahead, Todd.
For me, any of the Moog synthesizer apps, like any one of them is, and I believe there's some free offer right now for a few days where you can really download and try everything, but they're all awesome.
All right, Craig.
I have a bunch of console programs on it, so I can connect to the Yamahas or a bunch of other things, the Behringer consoles. But I also have one app that I've been using for a long time that I really love. It's called Goodreader, and it's a PDF text document. It'll let you go through audio files or video files as well. Connects up to all the Dropbox type accounts. It's very flexible, and it gives you an actual file system where you can organize stuff into folders and whatnot.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, purely for pleasure. Now, I use Audm, AUDM, for they read articles to you from the New Yorker and the Atlantic and the New York Times, and they scroll the text as you read the article, and very readable text too. Purely for fun.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I often have some kind of PDF score reader where I can look, so Fourscore or PIA score, where I can look at music and mark up musical scores. So I can have those while I'm switching live classical streams.
Yeah, go ahead, Tucker.
Net Tools, along with a USB, one of the camera USB adapters, and you can put an actual physical network adapter on it. Net Tools is really, really handy for general network troubleshooting, and then audio tools for things like Smart and Audio Analyzer and output tests and things like that.
Yeah, I have a couple. For me, I think that one that I actually gave a really bad review, and now I'm gonna have to go back and give them 2 stars instead of 1 star, but it's still necessary, is the BLK 360, because it's the app that runs the BLK 360. And it's kind of amazing that you can use an app for it. They don't write it very well. I know that sounds crazy. I have a love-hate relationship with it at this point. The BM cam control is pretty cool for being able to control your camera. Unity, for mine, be able to pop it up there. And then also, I will say that if you integrate with ClearCom, the Agent IC ClearCom really puts Unity to shame. So it's 24 keys that sit up on your iPad. It is just an amazing experience, and I just hope that anybody from Unity would look at it over and over and over again and think about what would be possible if we weren't limited to 6 PLs and we had just 24 keys in front of us that we could turn on and off. The mix effect is something that I'm really excited about. I haven't used it heavily, but I'm excited about what it can do. PCAM Pro, which is it's not cheap, but a lot of those let you do some framing. Polycam, now that you have if you have LiDAR, so Polycam lets you digitize the scenes around you. It's not perfect, but if you need to get some general 3D data that's measurable, it works pretty well. I haven't tried it too much with I use it on my phone all the time. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So I have Touch Portal, which is kind of like a Stream Deck version for the iPad. I've used that before. I was using Procreate over the weekend, but the biggest thing and we got to wait for Zoom to do the update, is with the new iPad Pros, you have the 12 megapixel 122 degree field of motion. So it's going to be like having a portal and being able to move it around as we go. And hopefully there'll be a way to control it. So if we do have somebody that's coming in from an iPad, we'll be able to set their video to where we need it to go.
Good, Tucker.
From the makers of QLab, Go button is a really good just run queues. You can do a lot with that. And then also the AWS console for all of those of us that are in AWS.
There you go. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Randy McEntee in Western Springs, Illinois. Any recommendations for an inexpensive alternative to SohoNet Flex devices for low latency 1920 by 1080 decent color for remote client sessions for commercials, finishing, and visual effects?
Jonas?
While I'm not sure what the thing is that it should replace, I know some colorists that work with Parsec, since it allows you 444 color, and also visual effects artists. So especially since we're still in lockdown and doing home office, some people just remote into the office over Parsec, and it works quite nice.
Go ahead, Charles.
I would like to know what system he's in, but we've used two separate things. One is more expensive with, it's a Streambox, but it requires the client to have the box to receive the signal. And also on both options, you need to make sure that both people are looking at a calibrated monitor. So we're all sort of in the same place, which is why a bunch of us got the new iPad, so we can share files and relatively know we're looking at the same thing. If you're in Resolve, Frame.io, Michael Shioni has a video on YouTube. I'll put a link. And inside of Resolve, it guides you through the steps of you working with the colorist. It links the two systems together. The client will have more proxy files, but the colorist will have the full REST files. And I've heard it works pretty well, but it's a great video. You should check it out. That would probably be the cheapest because it's in Resolve. You get the free version, and Frame.io, depending on the tier that you're in, it's pretty affordable for what it does. It's amazing.
Next question.
Next one's coming from John Preto in Las Vegas. A riddle with my A10 Mini Extreme. I connected to a 2017 iMac Retina 5K running Big Sur after trying at least 10 different types of USB and Thunderbolt to no avail. I think he means Thunderbolt to Ethernet. All I would get from the software control was no device found. I switched the Extreme to my 2017 iMac Pro and it came up. Any answers?
I have the same iMac, I think. I think that's what I'm coming in on right now for that. I'm not having any issues.
After 3 hours, I solved the problem. I thought Jason would jump on this one right away.
What was it?
As it turns out, I was running the beta version of Big Sur on this Mac, and so I had to upload Big Sur as a clean non-beta, and it's working like a champ now.
Excellent.
So I wanted to save somebody 3 hours of their life if they're a developer and they're running the beta version.
Well, I'm on a cutting edge. You know, I'm right now. I'm on cutting edge. It's called Catalina. So I most of my work machines get updated with the last year's version when the new one comes out. Like I'm usually I usually have a computer that is on the new one that I'm playing with, but I literally spend a whole year letting it do its thing because I just find that to be a more stable lifestyle. Anyway, next question.
Next one's coming in from John Pewitt in Huntersville, North Carolina. I'm looking for some sort of diagramming software so that I can show my lighting setup for photo shoots and plan the setup for future shoots. What does the panel recommend?
There is a software that's dedicated to this, and I just can't think of the name of it right now. Go ahead, Craig.
Lightscribe, I think, is one of the big ones.
Yeah, I think that's it. Hold on, let me see if it's... But yeah, there's a couple pieces of software that are literally designed as a template to do. If you're going to do shoots, this is what I don't know if it's Lightscribe or not, because this website doesn't look like the one that I'm used to. But there are some software that's now what we do to lay it out is usually SketchUp. we just put it in SketchUp and do it. But as far as what some of these do is let you actually view the look. Go ahead, John.
So a lot of the I don't think you're using DMX though, John. Several of the DMX software have these environments that let you put the fixtures and then adjust the light, and it actually shows you what the light's going to look like. They're really cool. I don't know if that works for you, but they're there. Light Key is the one I use.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I haven't had to do that. I saw it and I was like, this would be amazing if I was working in a studio. Light Key is one that's more for events, right? I mean, that's really if you're doing events there. So for photography, there is a dedicated piece of software that does this. Go ahead, Jason.
Shot Designer is an app for iOS that is pretty neat. It'll show you camera placement. It lets you set up and fix lights and distance and what have you. It's simple, but it will absolutely work.
Yeah, I can't find. I mean, Shot Designer is one of them.
Isn't
Hollywood
it
Camera Work is
Matt
great.
Workman? Sorry to interrupt you, but isn't it Matt Workman that has that app? If you Google his name, sorry, I'm kind of
No,
wrapped in this.
it's different. It's
capability.
like it's like really for photographers. Like it is a photographer's previs tool, and it has all the lights. You can drop them all in. Of course, someone sent me a test of it years ago, a year ago, and I was like, this would be amazing if I was working in a studio. Go ahead. We're gonna move on. We're not doing very well. Really fast, Beiju and then Tucker, but like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I was just saying for general purpose lighting, especially if you need all the libraries, well, VisiVig, Capture, Depends, and L8 are there as well. They have all the lighting fixtures ready-made in it, so they're probably more relevant for shows rather than just for photography. But all of them are pretty good.
There is one literally for photography that you just drag stuff in, has all the lights, and it will replicate the look of the lights in the cameras and everything else. And I just can't remember what it is. I know I reviewed it. I looked at it for review, and I didn't end up doing it because I just don't use it. Next question.
Tommy Tachant in St. Paul, Minnesota, or Minneapolis, sorry. What are the top 3 things you use your iPad for?
Go ahead. And we're going to move pretty fast. So everyone, the panelists need to be ready. We're still trying to dig our way out of the first hour questions. Go ahead, Todd, and then Charles.
So Jeff Francis and I have been having this conversation in Mukana, which you can see. Fourscore for music reading, I use it every day. For signal processing, I use 2 apps called Sampler without an E and Borderlands Granular signal processing. And then the third, I'm about to start using Mixeffect because I just took delivery of my A10 Mini Extreme. So I'm very excited.
Very good. Go ahead, Charles.
Yeah, the main reason was to actually be able to share files with other people that do have the same device, so we can actually manage things remotely, since I'm the only one with a Flanders. And then that is actually 1 and 2. And the third one is in the evenings. I watch the futures markets from my couch, but it's mostly for color. So
go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, Audem, which I already mentioned for reading, and then I use Gmail and Google Voice, and it's lean back as opposed to lean forward. If you're watching TV, it's great.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
The only thing I use mine for is a viewport and control of my DJI Mavic Mini.
What's funny for me is there's a lot of apps I love on the 3 most. I was trying to think of the 3 though I use the most are Notes, Keynote, and iBooks. so that, or Kindle, those kind of even up. But I put all the manuals for everything into my iPad. So I have a manual for every single piece of hardware is in my iBooks, so that I can get to it easily and fast. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Douglas Carmichael. I noticed there's a WLM display in Zoom. Waves Mercury seems to be a standard tool for many audio professionals. Is that correct? I own Mercury along with a full SoundGrid studio system myself and can't live without it. In my opinion, SoundGrid is a criminally underrated platform.
Yeah, go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, I use Waves LV1 quite a bit, and multi-rack or super rack, I guess now, quite a bit. And yes, they're fantastic.
Very good. Next question.
Next one's Randy McEntee in Western Springs, Illinois. My Shure MV7 is right next to a 42-unit rack with fans. What's the best way to live EQ some of that fan noise out of my live Zoom sessions?
Tucker.
Something soft between you and it.
Exactly. That's the best way. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I have an MV7, and the app is great. They've got some filters and things in there that you can use, and they keep updating it. That's the one good thing Shure's doing is I've had 3 or 4 updates since I got it.
The MV7 has an XLR out, right?
It does, yes.
Yeah,
but I don't use it. I haven't gotten good results with the XLR out.
The best thing would be to put something between it. The second best thing would be to do something like go through a Mix Pre 3 with a noise assist and have it turn it down. And then the third best would probably use in Zoom's, just turn off original audio. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, it's a little more complex than just EQing. That's why the audio tools inside the Mix Pre and those things are so valuable, because especially fan noise is very broadband. And so if you make it so you cannot hear the fan noise, your voice is also going to sound very thin, because you'll be getting rid of a lot of what's needed there. So,
next question.
Todd Reynolds in North Adams, MA, what is it, Massachusetts? Yeah. HDMI splitters, there are so many. Mine just died, which takes signal from my laptop to both the monitor and to an AME input. Any favorites on the panel?
I'm about to buy one. I was saving up my ducats for it. So it's not a cheap one, but I'm buying the Monoprice 8x8 matrix. You know, it'll handle 4K and, you know, I think it does HDMI 2.1. And, you know, I need a matrix. I decided I don't want a splitter. I want a matrix. I want to be able to go, you know, no, Nigel might have a better solution, but it's $1,000. It's not like it's cheap. I feel like the HDMI splitters are either really good or really cheap, but they're not both. Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, so on the really cheap end of the scale, I just bought some Tech Hole HDMI splitters from Amazon. I think they were about $20 or something. And they're actually powered. They come with a USB power. And because what I'm splitting, I'm not very worried about. It's just for my own use. It's been fine.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, I tend to go toward like the Extron or Lightwear and things like that. So that Extron makes really solid stuff that's going to last forever.
Next question.
Pete in Seattle asks, is there a better, faster OSC control surface than Stream Deck with Companion?
I don't think so. Better and faster? Yeah. Go ahead, Jonas.
Depends, because better is always for your use case. So if you hire Andy to build you your own control surface in something like Isadora, or use Touch OSC and build your own custom surfaces, that probably is faster and better to you. But I don't think there's anything compared to Companion that is as easy to set up. So yeah, choose what you need.
Next question.
Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. When buying into the Blackmagic ecosystem, would one be giving up on the Sony cameras, AJ Key Pros, and other gear that dominate the high-end market today? And is NDI an awkward fit in a Blackmagic world?
Yes. So NDI is an awkward fit in the Blackmagic world. And yes, you don't have to give up on those things, but you should. I mean, you're just going to be constantly running up against, when you go into an you get so much out of the integration of the ecosystem, tying all the Blackmagic stuff together. It's just, you're kind of working against all of those things. If you're going to, if you buy a switcher and then don't buy the other stuff, it's just, you're getting half the value. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, it's interesting. Blackmagic's done an amazing job of having a hook in every platform and every device that ties you to the next one. So if you have an ATEM switcher and you put an ATEM camera, cool. There's some benefits there that are really, really valuable. If you put one of their hyperdecks with the ATEM switcher, there's some really cool hooks there as far as autoplay, managing the system, getting time code across everything. So it's just, they've got a hook everywhere that adds to the ecosystem. It's like Sony back in the day, Apple now. They just have really, really nice things there.
Yeah, and you know, to production's defense, when Blackmagic came out, things were pretty rough. You know, even now you have to let them settle in a little bit before they when you buy the very first ones off the back of the truck. But I've had that problem with Sony as well, by the way. I had to have them update my cameras, and so it's that. But they had a bad reputation in the beginning, and also they're not used by rental houses because there's no money in it for them. You know, if you do a math against the total cost of purchase, the rental companies can't use it. So the reason that they're not in those situations, and integrators don't make a lot of money on them, so that they don't put them in. So there's a whole bunch of subsystems that aren't about the quality of the hardware that keeps the other hardware in play. Yeah, go ahead, Paul, real quick.
Yeah, I use the Sony MV1. It's a they call it the blogger camera. It's got a remote. It's got a cool tripod. What am I missing, Alex?
Shading.
With that? What am I missing?
You can't shade the camera. You can't focus the camera. You can't zoom the camera. You can't, like, those are all the things you can't do when you don't have that. You know, those are the big things. Next question.
Next one's coming in from JJ McKenna in Santa Venetia, California. What is the best low cost, and he has in parentheses, less than $100, Alex, USB over TCP IP device pair to use with a low latency Behringer UCA 222 to a personal computer?
I don't think that exists. I don't think it exists a good one. But I've never seen anything on USB that's point to point under $300 that really worked. So that consistently. So that's been my experience. So Stuart, real quick.
Yep, JCar catalog for the win there. There's a device that's USB at both ends, but I don't know if it's USB 3.
And we're going to run a little over, but we're going to keep on rampaging through these questions. Next question.
Liberty White in Atlanta. What's a video fly kit? Thursday show is dedicated to this subject. Is it another term for a mobile production kit?
It is mobile production kits, and it's Wednesday, I believe, unless I misspelled something. I could have, but I think it's Wednesday that we're going to talk about mobile fly kits. Let me know if I typed it in wrong. Go ahead, Stuart.
Dang it! I will be using my mobile kit at a pub on Wednesday.
There we go. Maybe you can just jump in with your cell phone and show it to us in action. Next question. Yeah.
Douglas Carmichael, do you think that people will be hesitant to return to large-scale concerts as they resume because of a perceived feeling of unsafety?
I think that. Anyway, go ahead, Tucker, and then Charles.
It depends on where you live. I just did a festival down in Texas, Oklahoma, southern central area. They are very much, let's do it. It depends on where you live.
Go ahead, Charles.
I was down near you, Nigel.
I would have to say, given the history of the human psyche, we are very quick to forget things that just happened and get back to what we already know, which has always gotten us in trouble. Our notion of change happens through many, many years. So I know there's a lot of people that just want to get back to what they know.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, everybody will be drunk or high, so it won't matter to them.
I think that the thing that I don't think it's COVID that's going to make a difference. I think that the fact I've just been privy to a bunch of tests looking at concerts, and there's a lot of better ways to watch them, than to go to them. And I think that the quality of video and audio has gotten to a point in some cases where, venue to venue transmission is pretty amazing. And I get that some people really want to be around, 10,000 sweaty people. It's just not the thing that I do. So I think there's enough people. And again, it's not a matter of whether everyone wants to do something. If you drop by a certain percentage, things change regardless of whether everyone wants to do something or not. It's a certain percentage gets in and then starts to expand because it just makes more math. The math of distributing concerts to 1 million people at one time is just way better than bringing them into a stadium, and eventually the money will win. Go ahead, Nigel, and then Jeffrey.
So having just been to my first concert, not quite full auditorium, I was absolutely happy with it. I actually think the most interesting thing is going to be what the artists choose to do. And there are so many models now for them not to have to go on tour, them have to do some of the things they were doing to earn money. And
we get, like, artists love to say things, and you say, well, artists love to do this. They love to be on tour. Artists love to do like 10 shows a year. Like, that's been the experience is you see them in the first 10 shows. That's all I used to do is work on concerts. And I worked with the artists. You always knew whether they were in the front half or the back half of their tour, because, by the back half, they're just going through the motions, trying to survive. In the front half, they're really excited to be out there live and everything else. The first couple are usually frustrating. There's a bunch of little technical things that they're mad about, and then they get into it. But there's like 8 or 10 of them that are just amazing. And then after that, they're just grinding because it's the only way they can make money. And so them not having to tour, I mean, I'm in these conversations every day. The number one argument for the band is that they don't have to tour anymore. And they'll say all kinds of things to their fans, but the number one thing that they're saying internally is, does that mean I don't have to go on the road? Jeffrey?
Yeah, the road sucks. I can tell you that firsthand. There's a lot of venues that are doing a lot of testing, different things like vaccinated sections, unvaccinated sections. So we'll have some sort of split up for at least the next 5 years.
Yeah. Again, what you want to watch is 8K, 120 frames per second. I keep on saying that, but when you see that on a big screen, you kind of don't, like, there's nothing in a stadium that will compete with that. First 20 rows and backstage passes competes with it, but outside of that, nothing. And so when that starts to roll in, you're not, they're at home, theaters, so on and so forth. It's going to change everything. Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway. What is the best shutter speed to use for a mirrorless camera that outputs 1080 50p HDMI, but is down converted to 1080 25p in the capture card / vmix 1/50th a second or 1/100th a second?
Yeah, you want to set your, go ahead, Stuart.
Double the frame rate is the basic rule. Going to 1/100th is good for sport.
Yeah, so it depends. Yeah, to Stuart's point of view, you have to decide what you're capturing. What we do is we set the if we're doing a 50 frame per second output, and then we're going to stream to the capture card, we'll often set our shutter to 360, so it's the same frame rate as the 1/50th, and then we get proper motion blur on the output, because we find that people are less sensitive to a little bit more motion blur than less. Less looks very stuttery, and so that's been our experience. Go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, just a quick note on shutter speeds into vMix. If you drop below 1/25th, you can end up with problems, and cameras can suddenly not be seen by vMix.
Shutter or frame rate?
Shutter speed.
Interesting.
I was shocked too, yeah.
Next question.
Next one's coming in from Jonas Tatel in Reutlingen, Germany. When you do a tech check, do you also check the QoS data in the back end? And he has a note here that that's in the Zoom dashboard.
We have not. We don't dig usually that deep into it, but we should look at that more. Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one is coming in from Randy McEntee in Western Springs, Illinois. Any good resources to help a complete audio newbie improve room acoustics for an editing suite that perhaps will eventually have in-person client sessions and Zooms?
Ask that tomorrow. Like we have some of the folks here today, but ask that tomorrow. Tomorrow's the audio day, and it's just the best day to ask really, like those kinds of questions is on Tuesdays. And we don't have that much of a vertical in many of the other days. We're trying to get to that point, but it's an incredible brain trust on Tuesday morning. So ask that question again tomorrow. Next question.
Michael Sweeney in Chicago. Can anyone recommend a path from composite video into the HDMI realm?
Yeah, there's definitely lots of composite to HDMI converters. I don't know them off the top of my head. Go ahead, Jason.
Monoprice has a very inexpensive one that works really well. It's under $50, so I wouldn't go any farther than that.
Next question.
Ernest Floyd in Bastrop, Louisiana. Any recommendation on a good GSM unlocked hotspot to use in Mexico? I need one with an Ethernet out. We'll use on Telcel and AT&T.
Go ahead, Tucker.
I use PepWaves all the time. They do have region-free versions that will work anywhere. I'll be taking one to Japan soon.
There you go. Yep, PepWave is great. Next question.
Steve Bauer in Seattle. The movers broke my office chair. I know we've discussed it before, but can we quickly go over chair recommendations? I have a small abnormal need for a low 17.5-inch seat height.
We don't talk religion.
I don't know if this one goes that low. I will say that there is, I just got the Mira 2 because I was having a lot of back issues. Oddly enough, I'm spending a lot of time in Zoom, and I was having a lot of back issues and leg issues and other things like that. And so I got the Mira, and that along with getting up more often has helped a lot. So, but the Mira 2 is what I'm using. It's not inexpensive, but it's been a huge jump from the other one that I had. Go ahead, Charles.
I've had my Aeron chair for over 10 years, and I have another one at the office that I haven't seen in over a year, but this thing has been great.
Yeah. I mean, Herman Miller, there's a lot of other things that people can use, but a lot of us use Herman Millers. I've been using Herman Millers on and off for the last 25 years. And so I haven't found another one that I like as much. There's some good gaming chairs, but I just haven't, and they're not complicated. They're just simple, and even when I sit down, I feel like this shouldn't be something I can sit in all the time, but then I'm sitting in all the time, and I just feel a lot less stress. So next question.
Last one, Aaron Husledge, Durham, North Carolina. Is there a way to get Alpha Channel out of HDMI?
Not that I know of. I don't think you can do that. I don't think it's built for that, to send two streams of audio. Well, so yes, you could if you sent a 4K stream with and use two quadrants. One quadrant for so you could theoretically do a 1080p key fill with two quadrants. On the other end, you'd have to figure out a way to pull those or scale them or whatever. It'd be super weird. Like I'm giving you like a very weird solution, but so it's not impossible, just not it's not something I've done before. It works in my head in some weird twisted sort of reality. Go ahead, Jason, and then Tucker, and then Jonas, real quick.
Yeah, but not without a multiplexer. I had not thought of that, but no, not really.
That just came in my head. I was like, I wouldn't do it, but you could do it. If someone said, like, if my life depended on it, I would, someone had, it was one of those spy movies, and they said, you have to get an alpha channel out of that HDMI. I'd be like, I'll figure it out. So that's the only time I would use it. Go ahead, Tucker, and then Jonas.
I love that you went there. I had an event, and it was almost into the next hours thing of like, no, it has to happen. And that's exactly what I did. Is I had my lowers and I split the frame right down the middle, and I took and I dropped it down. So I had alpha above. Yeah.
There's another. Yeah, we'll talk about horror stories this week. Maybe another week, maybe even next Monday, because next Monday I didn't put anything into Monday because it's Memorial Day here in the US, but maybe we'll put in creative solutions, like how we figured out how to do something that was just not appropriate, but like we would never do in the real world, except we did it because there was no other choice. I think that's a good one. We'll have to think about
appropriately inappropriate rigging. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Jonas.
I have seen people do it with two 1080p feeds beside each other, and then use it in like projection mapping or something. You could do it that way.
Yeah. So. No, okay. So, all right. So now we are jumping into the horror stories, the events that will not be named, that shall not be named. So one thing that I just want to protect everyone from themselves. Don't talk about clients. Don't talk about brands. Don't talk about, individuals. It's just what happened. So I'll kick it off with the original event that will not be named. This is the one that probably made more of a difference for Pixel Core than any other event that ever happened. So we were in a southern city. We'll keep it even that much general. A lot of VIPs, a lot of stars, that are coming in, and these are A-level, not like people that we kind of know. It's people that we see all the time, and so we were brought in to do, to do a stream, to do hangouts, a whole bunch of them all at one time. And so we worked out with the hotel, and it was the first one. For years, we just used this company called Straight Up to always manage our bandwidth, and the budget was a little tighter, and I felt like, well, we can just work with the hotel. I mean, the hotel's got an IT staff. And usually we would just have Straight Up would charge a bunch of money for them to just sit there and basically integrate with the anyway. So we thought we wouldn't do that. We would try to do it ourselves. This was not the one to do that with. So we went in and the hotel, we talked to the hotel and we said, here's the thing, we need to get 10 megabits per second up and down for every location. There's like going to be like 8 locations, and each one of them has to have that. And they said, oh yeah, it's no problem. What we'll do is we'll give them, we can't do anything with the ports, but we can give them a code. And if they put that into their thing, they'll get put into a different different VLAN, and they'll be able to get 10 megs a second, instead of the cap that was like 2 megs or something like that. So that sounded great. And, we came in and we tested it. We got there the day before and we tested it, and we, everything worked perfectly. We got exactly what we were told we were going to get. What we didn't know is all these VIPs were coming in, and somebody down at the desk found out about this code. And of course, wanting to be like the cool person that can hand out cool things, started giving the VIPs that code. Of course, there's a certain amount of bandwidth coming out of the building. And so as they came in and went to their hotel room, we were like, so the show started at 7, and, we were at 6:30, we were at 10 megs a second at all the locations. At 6:40, we were at 8. At 6:45, we were at 6. So now we're calling the hotel, like, what's going on? They're like, we don't know. There's a lot of you guys connecting. I'm like, there are 8 of us. There's 8 if there's more than that connecting, it's too many. And by 6:55, there was 2 megs a second, and by, for each location. And by the time we started the show, there was less than a meg, for every location. Everything had just been sucked up into the air. And it was like, and it was just like, and it was just this, and the problem is there were so many locations, and there was a lot of other things that should have been a problem. A really power couple locked us out of their room until like 2 minutes before they were supposed to go live. And there was so many other things that happened that should have been a problem that we handled perfectly, except for that one thing, and it was rough. And so it was, but we definitely, it changed our molecules. It changed my molecules to where I don't trust anything anywhere ever. Like I don't trust anybody. Then 3 days later we had an event in London, King's Cross, and I think I've told this story before. we walked into King's. There's a big building there, and we had a big event, and it was with Richard Branson and a bunch of people. It's called the War on Drugs, and there was this big live thing, and people from all over the world and everything else. And when I did the walkthrough the day before, I was walking with F1 and F1 this time was managing that one, and I asked the guy, the IT person at the building, I said, hey, we're going to put a QoS box in at the WAN. Is that okay? And they're like, yeah, sure. And I said, and during the show, you might see some degradation, but after the show, it'll come right back up again. And they're like, okay, that sounds good. And when we walked away, the F1 person looked at me and he goes, so when you say degradation, what do you mean? I said, oh, just shut the building off. I'm not getting paid to keep their internet going. I only get paid to do the event, and I just, because after that, it was 2 days after I'd lost all my bandwidth. I was like, I'm not interested in sharing. I said, it'll take them 2 hours to figure out what happened. And by then we'll just turn it back on again. Sure enough, 10 minutes before the event ended, people are all piled up around my little desk trying to figure out, like they were threatening to unplug us. And I was like, you're going to unplug Richard Branson on, like, are you really going to do that? And then I said, it's only going to go on for 10 more minutes. And then we got through it. But from then on, we just became very, very, very rough, like with people about bandwidth, and very, like we're not trying to be nice. We're not trying to do anything else. All we care about is our bandwidth, and we want primary backup. We want this. We'd always ask for hard lines. We'd always, but that horror story became kind of the mantra, but it was internally, it was called the event that will not be named. All right, Jason, go ahead.
Oh boy. First, hopefully my sync is not horrible, because if it is, please just cut me off. It makes me absolutely crazy, but
you can make it quick. You can make it quick. It's
okay. Suffice it to say, I have very, very similar bandwidth stories. But the one that comes to mind involved a 300-foot cable somewhere in the middle of rural Maryland, and a Holiday Inn Express that really, 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 I didn't choose the venue. Good friend of mine brought me on, and oh boy, was it was a tricky weekend. Let's just put it that way.
Next, any other takers? I can tell you horror stories all day. so I can keep going. Go Stuart and then Courtney.
This is actually the opposite of a horror story when it comes to bandwidth. Myself and a bloke called Brett Ramsey, who will be listening, we've done Formula SAE out of different racetracks in Australia at different times. And we're fortunate enough to actually meet one of the Telstra engineers. Now, Telstra is basically the largest teleco in Australia. They have direct access to all the towers and all the hardware and all the best gear, which is why I bought an MR 1100 Netgear, because that's the one the Telstra engineers used to carry for their access. But the opposite of losing all the bandwidth is being nice to the Telstra engineer. When we're at different motorsport events and he happens to be there, he turns up with a booster aerial, if you will. So while everybody else has got 1 or 2 bars of service on the phone, we'll have 20.
Right.
And it never drops out, and it's beautiful. And the secret to it is be nice to the engineers.
But this is a horror story. Where's the horror story?
Your service provider.
Where's the scary
No, this
part?
is the opposite side of the
No, that's not what we're doing. We're doing
side.
horror stories.
I'm just saying, there's a solution.
No, we don't want solutions. We're just talking about how bad it was. Anyway, go ahead, Courtney.
My horror story doesn't necessarily have to do with bandwidth, or it does have to do with audio. Back in the 70s, I worked on a movie called Roar, and I was production.
You worked on Roar
for 2.5 years. Yes.
Oh, gosh.
And for those of you who don't know Roar, let's see if I can bring up part of a trailer here.
Are you in the documentary?
Yes, I am in the documentary.
Oh my gosh.
And this
is the worst idea ever.
It was such a horror story, this movie, that they made, National Geographic made a entire documentary on this, and they called it the most dangerous movie ever made. And so you can go look that up. But this is what it was like on the set. I was on the set every day for the production of this movie.
Did you get attacked?
I was one of the few that came out without holes in my arms or legs, but there were over 70 people that were injured on the set in the crew. Now, none of the animals supposedly were not injured. Actually, 3 of them were shot by the police. But there was a flood. There was fires. There was, it left me with enough horror stories to tell for the rest of my life.
Well, it's funny because we've talked about it in behind the scenes of like, well, at least it's not Roar. we just know of that film.
And there's so many people in Hollywood that worked on that movie. We went in the camera room. There was a list of all the camera people that worked. Jan de Bont was the DP, and if you know Jan, he's now director. He directed Twister and Speed and a lot of other big movies. And he's a total madman. And the director, who is now deceased, Noel Marshall, was the producer on The Exorcist, and he's also a madman. And so putting those two madmen together on a movie, we went through so many camera people. There was a list that started at the top of the wall, went all the way down to the bottom of the wall, started another list that went all the way down to the bottom of the wall. There was 150 camera people that went through rotation. They'd work a few days and they go, this is crazy. I'm getting out of here.
It's like, that's not worth it. That's great.
So I've got lots of horror stories.
That's amazing. Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, so I bought this camera, this fancy HPX 500 camera back in 2008 or so. And I was going around town, I was shooting gigs, and this one was a big concert at the Gorge here in Washington. And you can't really see it in this picture, but I had set up 15 feet of dolly track, and I was going back and forth, getting these shots. And all was going well. This was a 3-day event. And then, that's the stage there. Then this maniac threw this thing into the crowd, this big heavy thing that could have hurt somebody. He threw another thing into the crowd, which was a box fan and a light. And you can see there's a lot of people there. This venue goes all the way up into these hills. And the guy tried to grab my camera that I had paid for $25,000. And I was not a happy camper. So
I can see that.
I was like, you are not taking my $25,000 camera and throwing it. And
What
he
was
was pulling me up with my dolly track with my 50 pounds of sandbags. And I weigh about 150 pounds. He was pulling up like 200 and some pounds of stuff. And he was pulling me up. Like that little guy was pulling all that up. And this wound up on Rolling Stone. So it was
Cameraman.
pretty classic.
That is awesome. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's crazy.
What was the outcome though? Did he get your camera or did you hold on to
No,
it?
he did not get the camera.
Did you have to
defended
land
the
a punch?
camera. So if you ever need somebody to defend the camera, I'm the guy.
Totally justified. Totally justified.
Were you about to punch him in that picture?
Yeah. Looks like it.
Yeah, I was gonna do more if I could. And the guitarist came up and kicked me after this, if you could believe that. I blocked him. I took off my SDI feed after that, and they were going to throw color bars. They couldn't figure out what was going on in the truck. They're like, we would have put color bars on them for the rest of the show had we known, because that was a jerk move to come up and try to do that to.
Yeah.
I mean, my job's to make him look good on a 30-foot jumbotron, and here he is, trying to take my stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah. Drugs. That's usually what's behind that. Drugs. A lot of cocaine. Tucker.
Yeah. So on back to the animal theme. I was asked to design a show that was in a venue where it was ground support only, and they wanted to do it in the round. Okay, we'll do self-climbing, we'll build big rig, we'll do line array coming from that, going out, covering this large room. We're going to do a scoreboard in the middle, and cool, here's a design. It's going to cost this amount of money. And I was kind of in the lower middle end of the spectrum of people that could make decisions on it, but I was the one that did the design. And then it came back, hey, they're not going to pay for that. They can't pay for that, but we still have to give them that thing. Scoreboard in the middle, audio coming from the center, normal distribution, things like that. Okay, put together an alternative design that was very painful to build, took about 26 hours straight to build, got the thing built, got it up in the air, and the whole time we're kind of like, man, we don't love this. We don't like building in this way. We don't like dealing with this. And then they open the event up, start the event, and the one thing that, because in Oklahoma at that time we didn't have a lot of earthquakes, the one thing that could absolutely tear this down walked in the room, and it was an elephant. And it was circus themed, and they brought the talent in on an elephant right up next to this 4-post 20-foot tall structure, and it was terrifying. It was not a good experience. But yeah, 26 hours to load in for about 24 minutes of show, and
there you go.
I compromised that once.
Yeah, it's it is one of those things that, you think you got it all sorted out. We had so someone else has their hand up. We had I think the total budget was probably, I mean, our budget wasn't this high, but the total budget for the event was probably $6 or $7 million. And it was a big event, and there was a bunch of people and important people singing and dancing and all that other stuff. And so we had a truck, a broadcast truck, and we had two to power the truck. The venue that we were in, it was in LA, didn't have a lot of power. So there was just, we had these Cat makes these, they're a full container that is a power source. It's a big generator. We had two of them, primary and backup. And there's another one on the other side of the building to manage the rest of the stage and everything else. Anyway, so we had the primary and backup for the broadcast truck. So we had it all set up and everything was going well. The client, just didn't want to spend $6,000 a day to keep both generators running at the same time. So you keep one running because it's $6,000 a day, and we were there for like 3 days before the event, so it's $18,000 just to keep a backup running. And they chose, hey, we'll turn it on at 6 o'clock in the morning, on the day of the event, we'll turn on the backup. So anyway, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the head gasket blew in the primary, and the truck went down. And the folks at Cat were, I know we didn't say we were going to say names, but I'm still pretty bitter about it. They just plugged it into the other one and turned it on and hard started the truck. Like basically just put, flowed stuff back into the, there's a huge power spike. So we got in there and the truck's working. It's all fine. But it is now like we have just one power source. And of course, Cat wants to make good. So they're like, hey, we'll bring you another power source right now. We'll get you another one in there. So now I'm in a situation where if I say no and that power supply goes bad, then it's my fault. Like that I said, no, I don't want another power supply. But if I say yes, I have to put it in, and so we're gonna have to turn the truck down again. And so I decided that I said, if you can get it here by 9, the show starts at 11. If you can get it here by 9:15, we talked about it will take 15 minutes to do it and everything else, and we still have an hour and a half, and we'll slowly turn the truck down, and then we'll change the power and get it all back up, and then turn it back up again. And so we talked about it for about an hour, and then we said okay. And so anyway, so they brought the truck down. Now the way I don't know who makes them now. It's a Harris router, but Harris is now owned by somebody else. But the Harris router has 256 in, 256 out. It's a $250,000 router that sits inside of the truck. It's got two cards, primary and backup. But what happens is that when it comes up, one card looks at the other one and copies all the information over, to make sure that they're synced, right? And so what happened was we turned the truck back down. That hard start that had happened before had corrupted one of the cards. And so when it turned back on, that card corrupted the other card. Like the other card had taken over because that one had gotten fried in the hard start. But when it's turned over, it's synced, and then it had all the corrupted information. So suddenly our engineer comes over and says, we don't have a router. And for those of you watching, the router is how all the video gets from everywhere in the whole truck, And so then there's a lot of trying to figure it out, talking to Harris. Harris is going to literally drive over another card, but it's, it's an hour and a half from the show time, and there's a lot of people. There's, 7,000 people in the room and a lot of people watching. There's satellite trucks, that kind of thing. And so we started working through it, and we didn't have a router at 10 o'clock. There was no router, no video signal, no nothing. And so then that's when I felt like I got to tell the client that, we've got some issues. And so I went up to my client, who's at the agency that's working with the main client, and who's a big client, it's a huge company. And I said, we don't, the truck, I kind of explained very quickly, tried to make it simple. And she said, well, we can at least record it, right? I said, no, it's Triax to all the cameras. There's no, without the router, there's no way to record. And she's white, and one of the harder conversations I've had with a client. And when I got back, the engineer, and fortunately for us, this is why you hire a really expensive crew. We have a really good engineer for the truck, and the person running the switcher, the TD, happens to design studios with the Sony switcher so all the routing and everything else, she does all of that, and so the two of them had concocted a way to basically hard route everything in and out to the monitors and everything else. And so they're running around and you just hear them yelling, I got one, I got two, like they're yelling and going back and forth and they're figuring it all out and everything else. And, and it was just like, you're sitting there in that, I always think of that moment in Armageddon, where you're that guy in there and they're trying to redo the nuke, they're trying to turn the nuke off. And he's like, do a good job, and you're just sitting there going, and it was just like, but it was just terrifying. And at about 10:45, first camera came up. Like we got a camera, like we could run a show. Oh, by the way, they had a red carpet with the CEO coming down that was supposed to be played back during the, at the very open. And we didn't have any cameras. And so we ran out with an iPhone and shot it. Just ran out, just pulled back like this with an iPhone and just grabbed it and then pulled the data off of it and threw it into the EVS. It was just the most, and it looked fine. That was the scariest part, is that the iPhone looked fine. So anyway, but we had to shoot that because we didn't have any cameras at the time, because he was coming in at 9:35. And so we were doing that. And so then the next cameras came up. We had every camera up at 10:58 except for the graphics, input. And so, so we went live on time, and we just used the jib as the, because they had a huge LED wall. It's probably like 60 feet wide and 30 feet high, where all the graphics were going up as they were doing their presentation. And we just used the jib, shooting these big shots of the graphics on the LED wall, because that's all we had. And it turned out that we thought it was actually better, like it was better. It was actually looked better. Like we went to the graphics came up at like 10:15 or 11:15, and we were like, oh, that feels very jarring. It's better just to shoot it with a jib. And of course the client comes back and it's like, that was the best show ever. And all of us just sat down and just stared at the wall. Like it was so much, it was like, there was so much adrenaline. Like you were just like, like at the end, you were just like, just kind of rattling around. Like it was so close, but while we made it, it definitely, those are the moments that now we don't trust, again, when people wonder why live people don't trust anything, but when people tell, oh, the Blackmagic router might fail, I'm like, every router might fail. Like everything can fail, like everything. And, so then I felt much, unless I needed a truck, I would always use my truck, my little trailer, because my little trailer couldn't do all the things the truck could, but it had a backup. I had a backup router, I had a backup switcher, I had two of everything in that, along with, an incredible amount of conditioned, I was way more resilient than a truck, even though I didn't have the features of a truck, and so that's what we kind of leaned back into. But it was definitely one of those moments that you don't forget. Go ahead, Courtney.
I've got another horror story unrelated to Roar, but also from the film era. Was working on a commercial, and will not name anybody in this, but it was back in the 70s, and then 70s, early 70s, and it was the location shoot, and we had a long drive to the location. It was a film shoot, and the DP was the head of the production company, and I was just a production sound mixer on the shoot. And so we drove 3 hours out to the location. We got all set up as a big commercial, a lot of people on it, for a fairly high profile client. And we got all set up, and the DP and the camera assistant, I look over and they're kind of white. And I was going, what's going on? And they confided in me that they forgot to bring the film stock. And they didn't tell anybody. They pretended to load the camera, because you loaded it in a black bag, nobody knows. And pretended to shoot. We shot all day with no film in the camera. I rolled sound, and they told the client the lab lost it.
Oh my gosh.
That's a true horror.
Okay, so here's one. We'll do this one real quick. Rupert says, what really happened when blah, blah, blah at blah, blah, blah in blah, blah, blah? Does anyone have one that people would know or might know that they don't know the true story? Go ahead, Stuart.
I think Rupert's question was actually referring to your story before, but an easy answer for it is a weather balloon, and it's always a weather balloon according to the official.
I think the one that we might have talked about in the past, we'll put in here. It's not really a horror story, but it is something that you find it funny when you're in something that people report about. During the Romney-Obama debate in Denver, during that debate, there was a loud thump, an audible thump during the debate that caught their attention. They looked to where that was, and Secret Service grabbed onto their guns, and like it was like you see everyone's hand went under and everything else. And anyway, so and then there was like it was on the everyone all this different talk shows were talking about it, and that it was a conspiracy, and that there was this and there was that, and somebody had a gun, and there was like you just watched it just roam through the entire thing. So what actually happened in there was that I was pulling a 1650 Pelican case because we had finished doing a bunch of shots in that building for the around it, and I just didn't realize how much noise a 1650 would hit if it hit a metal yellow jacket. So it's like a yellow jacket that holds all the cables that go under it, and it just looks like a yellow. I didn't think about it. I didn't think that, wow, that's going to make a really loud bang if I hit it with a 1650 as I go over it. And it just made it was startling to me. It was startling. And what happened was that all those cables that were going through that yellow jacket forced the door to be open so when you look down that door, what you were seeing is the side of the stage. Like it was right off stage. And so when you made that loud bang, it was picked up in the mics. so anyway, so if you're ever wondering, if you ever watched and thought about what happened there, that was me. It was my fault. Moo, moo, moo. Anyway, not really a horror story. It all kind of blew up, but it was very entertaining to watch late night talk about something and come up with all these crazy, it definitely did not improve my opinion of the press, because it was just like they were so sure that it was this and this, and I was like, okay, well, I was actually there and I actually know what that was. I still have the shovel. All right, who was Brian? You had one.
Yeah, this one speaks to planning and preparation, and it's not so much a technical thing, but just if you have everything prepared for a show. I was part of a group that was doing music for, in Canada, the Premier's annual prayer breakfast, so that'd be the equivalent of the governor here. And we'd rehearsed the night before. There's an early morning thing. There's a lot of, political people showing up to this thing. And I'm a French horn player who happens to be behind a piano playing some keyboard stuff. French horn players can read one note at a time. That's what you do. Reading several notes at a time and getting all the fingers to land in the right place is not my strong suit. That's not what I was doing. At the event, the morning of, all of a sudden we are told that the lieutenant governor is coming. This was not known before. The lieutenant governor is the Queen's representative to the province. And whenever the lieutenant governor enters the room, like Hail to the Chief, there is a march that is supposed to be played. The assumption is the guy behind the piano can do this. And so they send a piece of music that's handwritten poorly, chicken scratch, via fax. And this is back in the day when it was thermal fax paper. Try and make that stand on a music stand and try to play it. When playing it, that is not your strong suit. So I think the lieutenant governor almost threw a hip trying to march to what I was doing. And I had to sit on the stage for the rest of the prayer breakfast with this person staring darts at me. So it was not a good day.
We got one. What's the one question there, Guy?
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. I had my first gig with my Mini Extreme this weekend, but on site couldn't get frame rates to 30. It was hitting 24. My backup saved me and the client never knew, but I can't reproduce the failure to know what went wrong. Suggestions to keep it from happening again.
I don't know. Yeah, go ahead, Stuart.
Well, it's an all silicon device, so make sure you had decent power supply to it. If you drop the power supply, you might be slowing the clocks down internally, and that might slow your frame rate
Maybe. Go ahead, Courtney.
I'm not sure if the Extreme is the same as the regular Mini. Is whatever you have plugged into the first input can determine the frame rate. So if you had something plugged in there that was only delivering 24, you may not be able to set it to anything other than 24 because it'll.
You have to make sure, and also, or you can go in and explicitly change it in there. So you hit the little gear and you go up and you explicitly make sure to define it, and then it'll make everything be that no matter what. And you may have had that set the wrong thing as well. So that could be it as well. Could be bandwidth as well. Go ahead, Chris.
I don't know if my system's going to work or not, but back to horror stories, may I?
Yes.
So a friend of mine had stayed for a commercial for an air conditioning company. And this is on YouTube. It's fun to watch. And the stunt was they built this giant wooden ramp out in the desert. they took a school bus, I guess it was a city bus, and they were going to fly this city bus off this ramp, and it was going to fly through the air, and as storyboarded, it was going to land right on top of the air conditioner. The problem was that they grotesquely miscalculated, and the bus totally cleared the air conditioner.
Oh no! And they fired a missile into.
Just destroyed the bus in the meantime. So it is partially my story because I had to pick up in post. I had to pick up the air conditioner, put it where I put it where the bus was actually going to land, and then in After Effects just
crunched it.
Actually, I think this might show.
And head and hit the air conditioning unit. It's kind of what we call, and what I think
So
yeah,
it was, I was like, really? You drove the bus too fast. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, Stuart.
Chris, was that the voice of Shane Hurlbut?
Yes, it was.
There you go.
Yeah, Shane and his wife.
Nope, you're breaking up, Chris. You have to talk to your landlord.
But he's got a beautiful
Chris is
view.
having his own horror story.
Exactly, his own horror story. Go ahead, Guy.
The next one coming in from Douglas is that, let's see. I've heard that FEMA considers terrestrial broadcast TV to be important in an emergency because of its lack of reliance on internet infrastructure. If the disaster was serious enough, wouldn't power needs be another issue? I'd bet most camera switchers with an SDI out would need a lot of power. Note, for example, a GV Grass Valley K-frame panel, according to their specs, uses 600 watts alone.
Go ahead, Tucker. Would you have your hand up?
Yeah, I don't entirely understand the whole thing, but yes, FEMA does consider that. It's the emergency alert system. It's unbelievably quick once an alert is set off in one location for it to go all over the U.S. very, very fast because of that system. As far as the power needs, they do have requirements for battery backup there.
Almost all broadcasters and when you're going onto locations all have some kind of backup generation. So that's the big thing, is that it's kind of built into it. So they have UPSs, they have generators for those UPSs, they have extra gas for those generators. There's a lot of backup because they just can't go down, and there can be sometimes federal repercussions if they do. So there's a lot of issues around their license and everything else. And when you take a truck out, the truck has a generator in the back. I mean, oftentimes we usually want to use shore power when we can because we don't want to depend on the truck, but the truck usually has the capability of powering itself. Go ahead, Tucker.
Yeah, in the EAS spec, you also have to monitor 2 alternatives. So every individual broadcaster has to monitor, every station has to monitor 2 additional, and those are specifically in your region but diverse. So the web they've built there accommodates, a transmitter going offline and things like that.
Yeah. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Rupert McRae. Let me move some stuff over here real quick. Was the Y2K Millennium bug a waste of time or a good source of billable work? Any stories?
Excellent source of billable work. Turned out that the people who spent a lot of money on it, nothing happened. And the people who didn't spend a lot of money on it, nothing happened. But it was a lot of people got a lot of money for it. Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, it generated work for me because I worked on the Apple commercial, the Y2K Apple commercial it ran during the Super Bowl. So I got to create a running a version of HAL 9000 for that commercial.
That's great. Next question.
Next one's from Talal Miguel Lopez Waterman, New York. When everything is falling apart, people/producers are losing their cool. What tricks do you employ to stay calm and solve the issues as best you can?
I have a couple things. One is that, I have my auto response for whatever reason as a person is that when I get really calm, it usually means everything's going wrong. Like I just have an auto response to, I get stressed, but usually not when I'm in trouble. When things are falling apart, I can't feel anything. So I don't, it's a physical thing. I don't have any reason for it. My brain that part of my brain turns off. And so, it's probably from my childhood or something, but, I grew up in a somewhat stressful childhood where being calm was useful. So anyway, so I think that my whole family, if anyone gets upset around us, you'll see that all of us just go, and we just like literally, I can't tell you what I'm feeling anymore. I can't feel anything. And so I go completely numb. And so it actually turns out, well, not a great feature when you're in certain situations. When I got married, I got really stressed and I then didn't feel anything. Like it's like one of those things, like the switch flipped, because it was one of those things, like I was right before I had to, for some reason, I was printing the things for the wedding. And, for my own wedding, I was out printing 2 hours before the wedding, the little handouts, because no one else had done it. And I was in Kinko's and something went wrong with the file. And I just went, and then it just turned off. And the rest of the day I was fine. I was flat. But then everyone's like, it didn't look like you were very excited to get married, because I just didn't feel anything. And so that numbness goes in pretty quickly for me. And so I don't have that problem. But I think that one of the things I try to do is make sure we don't raise our voices around. We try to train crews not to raise their voices, no matter what happens, and the best advice we got from NASA was, I was like, you guys are just so calm no matter what happens and things are going on. And they're like, well, usually we're talking to someone that's a couple hundred miles off the surface of the earth, and us adding more stress to the system is not usually productive. So it's, so I think about that a lot too. It's just not adding more stress to the system and trying to just calmly figure out how to make it go away. Go ahead, Tucker, and then Stuart.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When you, same thing of like when other people get keyed up, I tend to go the opposite direction very, very hard, which can make things a little bit more difficult sometimes because they expect you to get keyed up.
Right.
But typically my first thing is I sit back for a moment. One, I what's my role in this? And then I look at all the people that are potentially freaking out. And I generally, even when I'm not the guy in that role, I'll usually, is that guy freaking out? Because if he's freaking out, then I usually go over and it's like, hey, do you mind if I take some charge here for just a moment? And I just immediately, let's get everybody together. Let's quickly talk through everything. And let's look specifically at the points, the commas between the departments. And let's make sure you're working on this. Whenever it's successful, your output to this other department is this. Let's talk about that point when you're ready. Let me know when you're there. And just very quickly kind of triage the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Stuart?
My friends know that if I quote Joan Cusack's line from Broadcast News, where it's Barbie, 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 that means somebody else is having a bad day and I'm not stressed. But if I start losing words or not forming whole sentences, it's time to walk away and let me finish fixing. Back to your story about people who are patching live or getting a vision mixer to work because the router had died. I've done a 4-camera setup on an analog mixer that I had to retime the cameras, as in open them and do the timing manually with color bars. So to hear that they reset a whole mixer that way is phenomenal. I know how hard that is.
Well, and
it's amazing.
The thing that I, for the most part, I mean, I've used things like Mad in the Kitchen and other things like that for years, because what I'm doing is we're training people and we're testing them. so we're training people to, you can't get through the panic response without going through it, and so the thing is that people have to just do a bunch of it, and so, it's what we're going to do with office hours as we start to pick up speed. Is everyone's going to get, not everyone, but lots of people are going to get a chance to work on office hours. And the idea is that you can just see it and things will go wrong and things will, we'll figure it out and everything else, but you have to just do it and that's the one thing I will say is that it's very hard to do live if you've just never done it before. You can think about it, doing is always, in general in life, you'll find that I lean towards doing as opposed to thinking about it. So, you just got to get out there in the field and start, because it's never going to be the same until you're on the ground. And so I also, though, I watch people that freak out and we just say they're not live ready is usually what we talk about. There's some people that just don't have the temperament to be live ready. And then what we do is we find them a place that is prepping for live or managing some of the details or, doing something. It's not that they're not useful. It's not useful to put them in that position because they don't handle that stress response the same way that we do, and so you just have to, it is a certain flavor of person, that can, manage a really stressful situation without getting too super stressed. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Aaron Husledge in Durham, North Carolina. Has anyone had to deal with an actual fire?
We had a generator in Utah. I think I've talked about it before. There was a 360 event that we did for Facebook, and it was the first Facebook live 360 live ever. We had 5 Ozo cameras being switched into in the middle of nowhere with no cell coverage. We had satellite trucks, and it was just a big mess. And we had a generator that somehow went from sine to square wave, and you know, our some of our UPSs started catching fire. So you heard over the radios, because there was no comms, you know, too far away. You heard the radio. Marty, this is Marty Brennan. Someone was calling it. Marty, we need you back in the truck. We've got smoke in the truck. And and that was all it was smoke in the truck. And you see Marty come running across the thing to figure out what was going on. The other one, we had when the first television studios came out, you know, the little TV studios that Blackmagic makes. They didn't handle heat very well. And as a backup, we had one at the very top of a rack, which is the worst place to put it. It's packed with other things around it. And you know, we were right before an event at Google, and same thing. We hear this. We got smoke in the room. Stand by. You know, and that's like and it was. I guess we filled up the hole and set off the alarms and stuff like that. It was bad, but no big fires. Anyone else with fire stories? Yeah, go ahead, Craig.
Nothing spectacular, but we've doing theater shows. We've had a couple of power amplifiers go up, let the magic smoke out, as they say. And then on one musical that I won't mention the name of, we actually had a very large prop in the show catch fire, and I'm not really clear as to what started it, but it was like a 20-foot piece, moving prop piece that had little mesh things hanging off it, and yeah, it came off stage during the preset before the show, and it went up. Like, it just went up. It was a bad scene.
Yeah, we saw one in a building one time where they mismatched the voltages, you know, by hundreds of volts. Like, it was like, and the Denali truck did not handle it well. They got another one. They had to drive it away. It was rough. Tucker, and then Courtney.
Yeah, I'll let Courtney go first. I got background noise and it should be gone soon.
You go ahead, Courtney.
Well, this is, of course, another roar story, but yeah, we had a flood and then we had a fire. We were shooting in Solid Canyon, which is a canyon north of Los Angeles, and wildfire came through, burning. You know, we saw it over the hills. Then we decided we were shooting. We decided, okay, well, we have to evacuate because it's coming down the hill and heading toward the set. And they had to evacuate 140 lions and tigers and 2 elephants and 3 zebras, along with all my audio gear and all the camera gear, up the canyon in a matter of about, half an hour. So luckily it stopped at the road before it got to the set, so the set wasn't burned out. But
lucky or unluckily.
Yeah. Trying to figure out how to move 130 lions and tigers in a half an hour is a pretty good challenge.
Yeah, but no bears. If we had lions and tigers and bears, it would have been over. Next question.
Next one's coming in from Shane Foley in Ashland, Oregon. When I was an overworked baby DJ, I fell asleep on air multiple times. Each time I awoke in a panic to flashing studio lights and the network's emergency tapes playing in my cans. What's the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you while in front of a camera or behind a mic?
You know, the BBC's mixers go the other way. So when you pull them back, they go off, and when you go forward, when you go forward, they go off, or when you pull them forward, they go off, and when you pull them back, they go up. It's a weird thing. But so I was told by someone at the BBC that was because of when the engineer falls asleep. If the engineer falls asleep, they push it down rather than up. So anyway, that's what I was told. They're all backwards. And anyway, so any what are the most embarrassing? I'm sure that I have a bunch of them. I just can't think of them at the moment. And probably people could probably think of my embarrassing moments in the trying to think of ones that I've done that are particularly embarrassing. Go ahead, Chris.
I've definitely dozed off switching live shows. It's not good. But if you sneak up behind me and I'm sleeping and you say take 3, this finger will twitch.
funny. Anybody? Let's see. I'm trying to think of the. I had a interview. I had an interview with Richard Butler from the Psychedelic Furs, and I didn't know who he was. Like I just didn't, like it was like one of those things. Like I knew the Psychedelic Furs, but I didn't know who Richard Butler was, and it was given to me right at the very last minute before I went on air, and it was just the most painful. Like me trying to say something useful and referring to things that weren't. It was like it was just nothing like just. And as soon as I got off the air and I realized like all the stuff that I had said wrong, it was painful. I was just glad not many people were recording it. It was radio in the 80s or 90s, early 90s. And so it wasn't like someone, I felt like it was just like a moment that, the Psychedelic Furs was something I listened to a lot. I just didn't know the band that well, and so that was a painful one. Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
It's similar to Chris. Yeah, falling asleep, but nudge me enough and I could get the Niagara going and yell speed.
Exactly. Sleep seems to be the common issue is falling asleep while you're working, usually because you're not haven't slept for a while. So, well, I think that was kind of fun, a little fun change of talking about it. I think that the thing that's important is for us to kind of talk through some of those things because I think that it's important. People oftentimes don't understand why live, like we say, live is scary, live is dangerous. It's because these things go wrong and there's nowhere to go. I mean, you have a time and there's people there and there's things that have to get done. And there's not really that's the thing that makes live events so stressful is that there is no delay. Again, when we were talking about earlier, like when events fail, you can, like if things aren't working at a concert, they'll just delay it by 45 minutes. They'll just go, oh, we'll just, but you can't do that on a live event, or you usually can't do it on a live event. And so those are the things that it's a very, unforgiving environment, to make that work. And again, once you're live, you're in front of a lot of people and there's no way to walk away. It's funny. It's so different. Like people think, oh, we're bringing YouTube influencers to be on a live show. And I'm always like, have you seen them do anything live? Like I'd like to know what that looks like for them, because YouTubers are really used to, they're used to cutting everything really tight. They do stuff in front of a teleprompter and they read it, and they cut all the air out of it. It's like boom, 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 and they're used to that. And then but there's lots of space in between. We've watched YouTubers like try to hold the space for 20 minutes and, they just blow up. Like we literally had ones just walk up and say, I need to turn off the camera. I can't do this. Like I just can't, like they just literally couldn't process that, what it took to do that. And then what's different is because people like equate it. Well, oh, that's a YouTuber. And we'll go, people always ask, I go, why don't we just we had a situation where we could, with one of our clients, getting Katie Couric or Soledad O'Brien was relatively, they were working with them and everything else. We were like, why don't we just get Katie Couric? Why don't we just get Soledad O'Brien? And they were like, why are you so obsessed with getting old broadcasters? I'm like, like not old broadcasters, but old media broadcasters. And I was like, because they're really good at it. They're really like, they've done this a lot, and it's just an entirely different experience when you have someone who does live shows all day. And I've told the story before about Soledad O'Brien when Shannon ran over to talk to her. She's like, I gotta show you this. And Soledad O'Brien's like, don't worry, honey, you got 30 seconds. Like to her, it's like an eternity of things that she can manage in 30 seconds. And so, but that's what you need. And that's what you want to try to do when you do a live team is you want to build as many people who have done hundreds, not in a live event. You want your team to be, I'm always bringing new people in, like always new blood, new people that are going to learn how to do this with us. But I always want the core people to have been doing this for hundreds of events. The key is you have to bring new people in specifically so that you always have new people that are learning how to do it so that, and the reason that we're going to do all this stuff over the summer is because I still see this huge explosion of online events coming, that we're going to keep on seeing churn up. And this is going to be a huge training platform. Office hours is going to become this thing where all of you are getting to play with the switches, and not all of you again, but people who want to and can prove themselves through that. we'll play with the switching and the graphics and the so on and so forth but the goal is we'll get really good at it. Like we'll never think about it like, oh, there's people in 20 countries running the show. It's no big deal. But also that we'll know who can handle it and who can't, and who just needs more time, all that stuff. So yeah, go ahead, Chris. Oh, you're stalling. Oh, there you go. You're back.
You always say when you're hosting an event, this is an Alex Lindsayism, be yourself plus 25%.
Yeah.
I would recommend.
I'm quoting Kevin Rose. Kevin Rose from Dig and Dig Nation.
Give it to you.
Everything.
I don't care.
Yeah.
Kevin who? So I would say that when things start going bad, you need to be yourself minus about 100. Your what you call, oh, I don't know, there's something wrong with me. It's probably a really great skill to have. That you can shut down, calm down,
right,
and think through the steps,
right?
Because panic never helps in a live situation, and worrying, and then once you're past it, worrying about.
Yeah, you're breaking up. I mean, the one thing that one of the things that's really important there. A skill. This isn't mine. Is just an auto response. So I don't have any way to control it. But a skill is to not think about the past, and I mean the near past, like the last 30 seconds. Like as soon as you get through something that's working, as Chris was kind of pointing to when he broke up a little bit, is you just stop thinking about it. You just move forward. One of the lessons that I had in that I was A2 for an NFL game, and A2 for the calling, when they go blue 45, there's a whole team that just does that, right? That just manages the mics on the that are on the shoulder pads and the wireless transmission. And I got to be A2 for that. Just in case you're wondering what A2 means for that, it means I run cards through Green Bay in the winter, in the middle of the winter. The reason I got to be A2 is because no one wants to do the Green Bay Detroit game at Christmas time. so I got to run cards, but I got to listen to it. And one of the things that was the most interesting about it was that you think that you're going to hear all this, inside football talk in the huddle. Nothing. They just go back and call the next play. And you realize you don't get to that level by talking about a bad call or a bad whatever. You get there because you finish that play, you go back and do a new play. And you don't think about it, and you have to be able to just turn that off. And you'll see, teams, baseball teams, football teams, soccer teams, whatever. The ones that recover are the ones that are looking into the future and not worried about what just happened. And the ones that lose are the ones that get caught up in it, and so in the same way as on a team, whether it's a live team or a film team or whatever, you get into a problem, whether it's your fault or somebody else's fault, you get it fixed, and then you keep moving, you just keep moving down the path and forget it ever happened. We can talk about it later, but we can, you want to get to keep, and that's a really hard, and that is a skill. Like that is a skill that you just have to, refocus your brain on what's needed at that moment because it's live. Anyway, it's fun conversation. Tomorrow we're going to talk about just tuning. I don't know very much about. I'm going to learn a lot tomorrow. It had been a request, and it had come up in a couple conversations, and I was like, well, we're going to bring it up on a Tuesday, and so I can't fill in. So hopefully our audio folks show up tomorrow, because otherwise I'll just change the subject. Because we don't have Greg and Brian and Jeff and Courtney and all these, and Tucker and all these other folks that are going to pull us up on the audio thing. So that's tomorrow, and so we'll stay tuned for that. Now we're going to jump into the post show. Thanks everybody.